Tesla was running into difficulties at school. Having surpassed his classmates in his studies, he became bored and frustrated by his inability to find a solution to his AC problem. He began to gamble more heavily, sometimes 24 hours at a stretch. Although Tesla tended to return his winnings to heavy losers, reciprocation did not occur. In one semester, he lost his entire allowance, including the money for tuition. His father was fuming, but his mother came to him with a roll of bills and said, "Go and enjoy yourself. The sooner you lose all we possess, the better it will be. I know that you will get over it." The audacious youth won back his initial losses and returned the balance to his family. "I conquered my passion then and there," he wrote, "and tore it from my heart so as not to leave a trace of desire. Ever since that time, I have been as indifferent to any form of gambling as to picking teeth." This statement appeared to be an exaggeration, as Tesla gambled quite freely for his future and was known to play billiards when he came to the United States. An Edison employee recalled, "He played a beautiful game. Tesla was not a high scorer, but his cushion shots displayed skill equal to that of a professional exponent of his art." It has also been suggested that years later, in the early 1890s, Tesla bilked some of the wealthy socialites in New York by feigning minimal ability in the sport. Exam time came. Tesla was unprepared. He asked for an extension to study, but was denied. He never graduated from the Austrian Polytechnic School and did not receive any grades for his last semester. Most likely, he was discharged, in part for gambling and supposedly womanizing. According to his roommate, Tesla's cousins, who had been sending him money, therefore withdrew their aid. Fearing that his parents would find out, Tesla disappeared without a word. Friends who had pitied him decided to shoot him. Clandestinely brushing his beard, Tesla found himself in the war that was forbidden by the American He played cards with the local man on the streets, as is still the custom today, and soon gained employment with an engineer, earning 60 florins a month. But the job was short-lived. Tesla continued traveling, making his way through Zagreb to the small coastal village of Mingar. He would not return home, for he didn't want to confront his parents. At the same time, however, Tesla also continued his quest for a solution to the problem of removing the commutator from the DC generator. His cousin, Dr. Nikola Pribic, recalled a story he had heard as a boy growing up in Yugoslavia in the 1920s. "My mother told us we would always like to be alone when Tesla visited us. In the morning, he would go off into the woods and meditate. He would measure one tree to another, making notes, experimenting, stringing wires between them, and transmitting currents. Peasants passing by would be astonished at such an erratic person. They would approach and say, 'You're sorry, your cousin seems to be crazy.' Having finally located his son, after word from Kulisic, who had seen Tesla in Maribor, Milutin traveled north to discuss his academic problems. Tesla refused to return to Graz, so Milutin offered a solution. His son would make a fresh start at another university. They returned to Goshkin. Re-accepted into the family, Tesla began once again to attend church to hear his father's sermons. There, he met Anna. She was tall and beautiful with extraordinary understandable eyes. For the first and only time in his life, Tesla would say, "I fell in love." Lighting in her company, Nikola would take Anna for strolls by the river, back to Smiljan, where they would talk about the future. He wanted to become an electrical engineer. She wanted to raise a family. The following year, Milutin passed away. A few months later, in 1880, Tesla left for Bohemia, now in the Czech Republic, to carry out my father's wish and continue my education. He promised to write to Anna, but their romance was doomed, and she would marry shortly thereafter. Tesla enrolled in the Charles Ferdinand branch of the University of Prague, one of the foremost institutions in Europe, for the summer term. According to Ernst Mach, who a decade earlier had transferred from Graz to be appointed Rector Magnificus, Prague was a city rich in talented people, with street signs often appearing in half a dozen languages. Although the city is full of majestic buildings, sanitary conditions were severely neglected. To avoid typhoid fever, one had to boil water or obtain mineral water from springs by water. Just 2 years into the testing stay, Margaret spent the afternoon days professor of philosophy. Stumpf was a student of the controversial ex-priest Franz Brentano, who also influenced another pupil, Sigmund Freud, and was also Tesla's philosophy teacher. Other courses Tesla undertook included analytical geometry with Heinrich Führer, experimental physics with Karl Dominic, both ordinary professors, and higher mathematics with Anton Puschner, who was an extraordinary professor from the German Technical University, also in Prague. With Stumpf, Tesla studied Scottish philosopher David Hume. Raised as a child prodigy of music, the acerbic and sharp-nosed Stumpf opposed a number of key psychophysicists, including the famed Wilhelm Wundt, as well as Mach. And at the same time, he also helped shape the thinking of a number of key students, such as phenomenologist Edmund Husserl and Gestalt psychologist Wolfgang Kohler. A persuasive advocate of Hume's radical skepticism, Stumpf argued for the concept of the tabula rasa. Basing his thinking on Aristotle and John Locke, both of whom repudiated the concept of innate ideas, Stumpf stated that the human mind was born a blank state, a tabula rasa. Impinging on it after birth were all of the primary quality things, that is, true knowledge about the world. Through the sense organs, Tesla learned the brain mechanically recorded incoming data. The mind, according to Hume, was nothing more than a simple compilation of cause and effect sensations. What we call ideas were secondary impressions derived from these primary sensations. The will and even the soul were reduced by Hume to impressions, associations of impressions. At this time, Tesla also studied the theorist of Descartes, who envisioned animals, including man, as simply automata, incapable of actions other than those characteristic of a machine. This line of thinking would dominate Tesla's worldview, would, ironically, serve as the template for a mechanistic paradigm that would lead the inventor to discover his most original creations, even though the whole idea of original discovery appears to be antithetical to this extrinsically motivated Aristotelian premise. According to Tesla, and to this view, all of his discoveries were derived from the constant world. Although Tesla is not covertly preferred for students to perceive consciously, in retrospect it appears obvious that Stumpf's composition did not stop Tesla from studying the Mach's experiments on intelligent planets. Born in Malaysia, by 1864, he was a full professor at Ernst. By 1867, he was head of the Department of Experimental Physics at Prague, 4 books and 62 articles to his credit. Influenced by the research in psychophysics of Beckmann at Graz and Ludwig von Helmholtz in Berlin, Mach studied the workings of the human eye along with his Prague colleague, famed physiologist and philosopher Jan Fortinian. Both the eye and the ear collected information from the outside world, analyzed it and transferred it via electrical impulses in the nerves to the respective processing centers in the brain. This traditional line of research had been taken by many other well-known scientists, including Isaac Newton, Johann von Goethe, and Herbert Spencer, all favorites of Tesla's. In his laboratory, Mach had constructed a famous instrument known as a wave machine. This device could make progressive and standing longitudinal and transverse waves. Mach could display a number of mechanical effects with these acoustic waves and demonstrate the analogy between acoustic and electromagnetic events. By this means, the mechanical theory of the ether could also be demonstrated. By studying acoustical wave motion in association with mechanical, electrical, and optical phenomena,
you settle down, please.
When the speed of sound is achieved,
Have you finished
the
it
nature
now?
of an airflow over an object changed dramatically. This threshold value became known as Mach 1. Mach also wrote on the subject of hypothesized that it was inherently linked to the gravitational attraction between two masses of the universe.
Okay.
relationship between the system and the rest of the
Take a
universe.
drink of water, please.
This viewpoint is extended to the relationship of mental events to exterior influences. Like Stump, he agreed that every mental event had to have a corresponding physical action. Since Mach's writings so closely parallel Tesla's later research and philosophical outlook, Mach seems a curious omission from Tesla's published writings. By the time Tesla left the university at the end of the term, he had made great strides, both theoretical and practical, in solving the AC dilemma. It was in that city, Tesla said, that I made a decided advance, which consisted in detaching the commutator from the machine and studying the phenomena in this new aspect. With the death of his father, he needed to earn his own living. He began an apprenticeship in teaching, but did not enjoy it. Uncle Pario suggested that he move to Hungary, where employment could be obtained through a military friend, Ernst, who ran the new American telephone exchange with his brother Ivan. In January 1881, Tesla moved to Budapest. He found to his dismay that the operation had not yet been launched. The Pushkar brothers were very busy men, running operations at St. Petersburg and overseeing in Paris Thomas Edison's incandescent lamp exhibit at the Paris Exposition, fixing the lighting system at the Opera House there. Out of funds and without a job, Tesla approached the engineering department at the Central Telegraph Office of the Hungarian government and forced his way into a position as a draftsman and designer. Working for a subsistence salary, he utilized what little surplus funds he had to purchase equipment to further his experiments. Anthony Sigeti, a former classmate and engineer from Hungary, with the body of Apollo and a big head with a lump in the side that gave him a scout in appearance, became Tesla's friend and confidant. Many a night when the budding inventor was not enmeshed in his research, the two fellows would meet at the local cafes where they would discuss the events of the day. Meetings generally gave inquired what Tesla would be wearing. Stumped for an answer, the youthful inventor came upon the clever idea of turning his suit inside out, planning thereby to show up with a seemingly new set of clothes. All night was spent tailoring and ironing. But when one starts with a wrong premise, no amount of patching can right the problem. The outfit looked ridiculous. Tesla stayed home instead. In a few months, the American telephone exchange opened there in Budapest, and Tesla and Szigeti immediately gained employment. The new enterprise allowed the young engineers to finally learn firsthand how the most modern inventions of the day operated. It was also the first time that Tesla was introduced to the work of Thomas Edison, the Napoleon of invention, whose improvements in Bell's telephone helped revolutionize the field of communication. Up the poles, Tesla would climb to check the lines and repair equipment. On the ground, he worked as a mechanic or mathematician. There he studied the principle of induction, whereby a mass with an electric or electromagnetic charge can provide a corresponding charge, force, magnetism in a second mass without contact. He also studied a number of Edison's inventions, such as his multiplex telegraph, which allowed 4 Morse-coded messages to be sent in 2 directions simultaneously, and his new induction-triggered carbon disc speaker, a flat, circular, easily removable device which is still found in the mouthpiece of every telephone today. As was his nature, Tesla
upstairs and see the things in mind. I suppose I just did washing. Put it on.
Tesla's every spare moment was spent reworking the problem of eliminating the commutator in DC machines and harnessing AC without cumbersome intermediaries. Though a solution seemed imminent, the answer would not be revealed. Hundreds of hours were spent building and rebuilding equipment and discussing his ideas with his friend. He pored over his calculations and reviewed the work of others. Tesla later wrote, "With me, it was a sacred vow, a question of life or death. I knew that I would perish if I failed." Monomaniacal in pursuit of his goal, he gave up sleep or rest of any kind, straining every fibre to prove once and for all that he was right and Professor Herschel and the rest of the world were wrong. His body and brain finally gave up. He suffered a severe nervous collapse, experiencing an illness that surpasses all belief. Claiming that his pulse raced at 250 beats per minute, his body twitched and quivered incessantly. I could hear the ticking of a watch 3 rooms away. A fly alighting on a table would cause a dull thud in my ear. A carriage passing at a distance barely shook my whole body. I had to support my bed on rubber cushions to get any rest at all. Sun's rays, periodically intercepted, caused blows of such force on my brain that they would stun me. In the dark, I had the sense of a bat who could detect the presence of an object by a peculiar prickly sensation on the forehead. A respected doctor
Shay,
pronounced his malady unique.
don't play with that in your living room.
Desperately clinging to life, Tesla
He's
was
like
not
Edison.
expected to recover. Tesla attributes his revival to a powerful desire to live and to continue to work, and to the assistance of the athletic dignity who forced him outdoors and got him to undertake health exercises. Mystics attributed the event to the triggering of his pineal gland, the corresponding access to higher mystical states of consciousness. As I uttered these inspiring words, Tesla declared, the truth was suddenly revealed. I drew with a stick on the sand the diagrams shown 6 years later in my address before the American Institute of Electrical Engineers. Pygmalion, seeing his statue come to life, could not have been more deeply moved. 1,000 secrets of nature which I might have stumbled upon accidentally, I would have given for that one which I had wrestled from her against all odds and at the peril of my existence. Tesla emphasized that his conceptualization involved new principles rather than refinements of pre-existing ones. The AC creation came to be known as the rotating magnetic field. Simply
Shay,
stated,
put that
Tesla
fucking ball
utilized
down.
2 circuits instead of the customary single circuit to transmit electrical energy, and thus generated dual currents 90 degrees out of phase with each other. Net effect was that a receiving magnet, motor armature, ideas came in an uninterrupted stream, and the only difficulty I had was to hold them fast. Tesla invented at this time not only single-phase motors, whereby the 2 circuits were 90 degrees out of phase with each other, but also polyphase motors, which use 3 or more circuits at the same frequency and various other degrees out of phase with each other. Motors would be run entirely in his mind. Improvements and additions to design were conceived. Finally, plans and mathematical calculations would eventually be transferred to a notebook. This step-by-step procedure would become customary. Ernst, who had initially hired Tesla, asked if he wanted to help his brother Thibodeau run the new Edison lighting company in Paris. Tesla said, "I gladly accept." Zigherty was also offered a position, so Tesla was fortunate to have a good friend with whom he could share the new adventure. Was Tesla the first to conceive of a rotating magnetic field? The answer is no. As far back as 1824, a French astronomer by the name of Francois Arago experimented with spinning the arm of a magnet by using a copper disc. The first workable rotating magnetic field, similar to Tesla's 1882 revelation, was conceived 3 years before him by Mr. Walter Bailey, who demonstrated the principle before the Physical Society of London on June the 28th, 1879, in a paper entitled A Mode of Producing Arago's Rotations. The invention comprised two batteries connected to two pairs of electromagnets bolted catty-corner to each other in an X-trap, with a commutator used as a switching device. The rotating magnetic field was initiated and maintained by manually cranking the commutator. On this occasion, Bailey stated, "The disc can be made to rotate by means of intermittent rotation of a field affected by means of electromagnets." 2 years later, at the Paris Exposition of 1881, came the work of Marcel Beaupré, who calculated that a rotating magnetic field could be produced without the aid of a commutator by energizing electromagnets with two out-of-step AC currents. However, Beaupré's invention, which won an award at the electrical show, had a major problem. One of the currents was furnished by the machine itself. Furthermore, the invention was never practically demonstrated. Other researchers who conceived of a rotating magnetic field, analogous to Tesla's but after his revelation in early 1882, were Professor Galileo Ferraris of Turin, Italy, 1885-88, and an American engineer, Charles Bradley, 1887. Ferraris was influenced by the work of Lucien Gaulard and George Gibbs, who designed AC transformers during the mid-1880s. In 1883, they presented their AC system at the Royal Aquarium in London. In 1885, they installed an AC system at the Budapest Museum of Italy, where they met the workers. Purchased from George Westinghouse for $50,000, the system was installed in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, in the rear of a rolling stand Westinghouse's head engineer. The Gaulard-Gibbs invention, however, did not do away with the commutator, which was the express purpose of Tesla's design. In Ferraris's published treatise on his independent discovery of a rotating magnetic field, he wrote, "This principle cannot be of any commercial importance as a motor." After learning of Tesla's work, Ferraris stated, "Tesla developed it much further than I did." Bradley filed for patent for an AC polyphase device on May the 8th, 1887, number 390,439. After 9 Tesla AC patents had been granted. Hasselwander, in the same year, utilized slip rings in place of commutators on DC Thomson-Houston equipment, and also designed 2- and 3-phase windings on DC armatures. The question of priority concerning Tesla's invention was discussed by Sylvanus P. Thomson, physics professor in London, in his 1897 comprehensive text on AC motors. Thomson, no relationship to Elihu Thomson, considered at the time to be perhaps the best-known writer on electrical subjects now living, said that Tesla's work separated itself clearly from predecessors and contemporaries in his discovery of a new method of electrical transmission of power. A question that remains unanswered is whether or not Tesla knew what he was. It is quite possible that he had read Bailey's paper, although no one at the time, including Bailey, comprehended the importance of research or understood the utility of independent inventions. Tesla stated in an early 1820s, "I have prepared a basic method to produce the rotations of a motor alternating the machinery of poles and its elements. In such cases, however, I employ true alternating currents. My invention consists in the discovery of the mode or method of utilizing such currents." A few years later, in a well-publicized case involving patent priorities on what came to be known as the Tesla alternating current polyphase system, Judge Townsend of the U.S. Circuit Court of Connecticut noted that before Tesla's invention and lecture to the American Institute of Electrical Engineers, AIEE, in 1888, there had been no AC motors. Furthermore, no one attending the lecture recognized any priorities. Whereas Bailey had dealt with impractical abstractions, Tesla had created a workable product which initiated a revolution in the art. The Tesla patents were also sustained against individual cases involving Charles Bradley, Sears Cabaneus and Hymeneal, William Stanley and Elliot Thompson. In citing a previous case on a similar issue, Judge Townsend responded to what today is called the doctrine of obviousness. The apparent simplicity of a new device often leads an inexperienced person to think that it would have occurred to anyone familiar with the subject. But the decisive answer is that with dozens and and rapidity of alternations, an alternating current motor was impractical, and the future belonged to the commutated continuous current. It remained for the genius of Tesla to transform the toy of Arago into an engine of power. The discovery of how to effectively harness the rotating magnetic field was really only a fraction of Tesla's creation. Before his invention, electricity could be pumped approximately 1 mile, and then only for illuminating dwellings. After Tesla, electrical power could be transmitted hundreds of miles, and then not only for lighting, but for running household appliances and industrial machines in factories. Tesla's creation was a leap ahead in a rapidly advancing technological revolution. 4. Tesla meets the Wizard of Menlo Park, 1882 to 85. Oh, he's a great talker. Can say he's a great eater, too. I remember the first time I saw him. We were doing some experimenting in a little place outside Paris. One day, a long, lanky lad came in and said he wanted a job. We put him to work, thinking he would soon tire of his new occupation. We were putting in 20 to 24 hours a day then. He stuck right to it. And after things eased up, one of my men said to him, "Well, Tesla, you've worked pretty hard. Now I'm going to take you into Paris and give you a splendid supper." So I took him to the most expensive cafe in Paris, a place where they broil an extra thick steak between 2 thin steaks. Tesla stowed away one of those big fellows without any trouble. And my man said to him, "Anything else, my boy?" "I'm standing treat." "Well, if you don't mind, sir," said my apprentice, "I'll try another steak." After he left me, he went into other lines and was accomplished quite a little. Thomas Edison. Taking the advice of Ferenc Puskás, Tesla left Budapest for Paris in April 1882, delighted with the chance to meet the Edison people from America and ready to build his motor and to find investors. Concurrently, he was getting paid for the experience. Paris in the 1880s was a center of modern fashion. Men in their cutaway coats, silk top hats, women with braided hair, long frilled dresses with buttons, and wealthy tourists ready to take back the latest fineries to their respective nations. Tesla was met by Ferenc's brother Tibodar Puskás, a hard driver, but also a man known to talk in air balloons. Tesla, whose head could also soar into the clouds, had met a powerful ally. Mindful of the need for secrecy, they discussed strategies for approaching Charles Batchelor, manager of the newly formed Compagnie Continental Edison, with Tesla's new motor as the young inventor was introduced to operations. Formerly a resident of Manchester, England, Batchelor, a master mechanic, had been sent to America a decade earlier to present innovative thread-making machinery recently created by his employers, the Coates Thread Company. There he met Edison, and shortly became his most trusted associate. Batchelor worked on the first phonographs and on perfecting the filament for the light bulb. He also ran operations in New Jersey and then in Europe, owning a 10% share of Edison's many worldwide companies. An open-minded individual, Batchelor was approachable, although also rather busy. Anthony Szigeti probably emigrated from Budapest at the same time as Tesla, since both were hired by Puskás and were together almost constantly in Paris, Szigeti wrote. Tesla was very much excited over the ideas which he then had of operating motors. He talked with me many times about them and told me his plan of constructing and operating motors and dispensing with the commutator. Having just purchased a large factory at Ivry-sur-Seine for the construction of generators and manufacture of light bulbs, Batchelor, as Edison's closest partner, was planning on erecting central lighting stations throughout Europe. He also had plans in England, where the Crystal Palace Exposition was then displaying Edison's new incandescent lamp. Batchelor would need good men to run the concerns, and wrote Edison frequently as to the expertise of the various workers. He was particularly impressed with Pushkash, who had successfully run the Edison lighting exhibit at Paris Exposition 1881. Pushkash is the only worker having any idea of push, he wrote, and I think that you should insist on him becoming a partner. Within 6 months, Edison Continental would be producing lamps superior to those from America. The company would erect central stations in most of the major cities of Europe for indoor lighting, and also administer the large outdoor arc lamps which were being used to illuminate the urban streets. Tesla, who was working at Ivry-sur-Seine, would be trained with the other workers to travel out and help run these facilities. I never can forget the deep impression the Magic City produced on my mind. For several days after my arrival, I roamed through the streets in utter bewilderment of the new spectacle. The attractions were many and irresistible, but alas, the income was spent as soon as conceived. And Mr. Pushkash asked me how I was getting along. I replied, the last 29 days of the month are the toughest. In the mornings before work, Tesla would arise at 5 a.m. to swim 27 laps at a bathhouse in the Seine, and in the evening he would play billiards with the workers and discuss his new AC invention. One of them, Mr. D. Cummings, foreman of the mechanical department, offered to form a stock company. The proposal seemed to me comical in the extreme. I did not have the faintest conception of what that meant, except that it was the American way of doing things. T.C. Martin writes, in fact, but his reputation as a true friend Tesla wrote out the specifications and mathematics of his AC invention in a notebook, and worked on alternative designs for his flying machine. He probably sought out financial backers, for he received an invitation to go on a shooting expedition from a prominent French manufacturer. Perhaps the inventor had not totally recovered from a strange illness he had almost succumbed to in Budapest, for after his outing he suffered a sensation that my brain had caught fire. I saw a light as though a small sun was located in it, and I passed the whole night applying cold compresses to my tortured head. Writing this passage almost 40 years later, Tesla claimed that these luminous phenomena still manifest themselves from time to time, as when a new idea opening up possibilities strikes me. In the summer, he worked on the lighting of the Opera House in Paris, and went to Bavaria to help in the wiring of the theatre. In the autumn, he may have helped in the laying of underground cables for the new central station going up in Paris, or travelled to Berlin to install incandescent lighting at the cafes. At the end of the year, Tesla submitted to one of the administrators of the company and for his new contributions, but he was sent to work in Strasbourg before financial compensation was awarded. In January 1883, Batchelor sold 1,200 lamps to the Strasbourg plant, located at the railway station, and within 3 months, Tesla arrived to oversee the operation. There he would stay for the next 12 months. Batchelor had been urging Edison to test the generators coming from America for at least 2 or 3 days with a full load. as fires from 40 amateurs
Yeah.
or insulation were
One
becoming
said,
common.
I can
Our house
have.
at Strasbourg
One
in
said,
particular
we can have some
is
ice
sensitive to
cream.
this type of problem. Since
No.
all our plants
Ice
are differently
cream.
constructed,
Whatever.
it would take
I
well-trained
don't know.
and creative engineers to
Ask Mum
run
about
things
that.
smoothly. Bachelor
Mum,
demonstrated
what they are?
confidence in Tesla's abilities by sending him to
What they
Strasbourg.
are?
However, he seems not to have mentioned
What?
Tesla in his correspondence with Edison. In
They're
any event, Tesla's
Yeah.
account of the situation in Strasbourg corroborates Bachelor's.
Ask Mum if she wants
Firing was
one.
perfected, and on the occasion of the opening ceremonies, a large part of the wall was blown out through a short
I think she
circuit,
wants it.
right in the
Yeah.
presence of old Emperor Wilhelm I. The German government refused to take the plant, and the French company was facing a serious loss. On account of my knowledge of the German language and past experience, I was entrusted with the difficult task of straightening out matters. Having anticipated a long stay in the region, Tesla had brought with him from Paris materials for his first AC motor. As soon as he was able,
I'll
Tesla
go
constructed
for the
the
milk
motor
one.
and sealed it in a closet.
I am
Now
going.
he shot
Yeah,
as
they
it
were.
rose.
Yeah.
However, summer would arrive before this first machine was in operation.
Yeah.
Maybe she'll,
Anthony Spaghetti, his
maybe
assistant,
she'll have chocolate.
forged a iron bit
Got chocolate.
which Tesla mounted on a knee, having
I
surrounded
think
it
so.
in
I
part
think so,
with a
yeah.
cord. Finally, Tesla wrote, I had the satisfaction of seeing rotation affected by alternating currents of different phase and without sliding contacts or commutator, as I had conceived a year before. It was an exquisite pleasure, not to compare with the delirium of joy following the first revelation. Tesla presented his new creation to his friend, Mr. Barzi, the mayor of the town, who tried his best to interest wealthy investors. But to my mortification, there was no response. Upon his return to Paris, he sought promised compensation for achieving a difficult success in Strasbourg. Approaching his employers, after several days of circulation, it dawned on me that my reward was fast in Spain. Mr. Bachelor pressed me to go to America with the view of redesigning the Edison machines. I determined to try my fortunes in the land of golden promise. John O'Neill, Tesla's first major biographer, has suggested that Bachelor wrote a note of introduction to Edison, which read, I know two great men,